And here we'll be comparing your monthly expenses in India versus in Canada based on a reference salary. And these are the things that mean a lot to you. Then in that case, it definitely makes sense for you to move to Canada. Then in that case, I would highly recommend you to stay back in India and build your dream career over there, because some examples of these careers could be nurse. What's up YouTube? It's Shivansh here. Welcome back to my channel. So a few weeks ago, I made a video on this channel talking about our monthly living expenses in Canada in 2024, living in Toronto as a family of two, because everything has become extremely expensive in Canada, especially over the last 2 to 3 years. And a lot of you guys actually reached out to me asking whether it's still worth moving to Canada or not, because some of you guys already have a pretty decent salary back in India and you're confused whether moving to Canada is going to be the right decision for you. But don't worry, today's video is going to give you a true picture of India versus Canada, and we'll try to answer if it practically makes sense for you to move to Canada or not if you already have a salary of about 15 lakhs per annum in India. And I've also prepared a spreadsheet for you where we'll do a detailed comparison on salary and expenses in India versus in Canada, so that you get to see some real numbers side by side, which will definitely help you make that decision. But before we begin, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because I make a lot of useful videos about studying and working in Canada and building a great career for yourself. So if you're interested, then definitely consider subscribing. And if you like and share this video with your friends and family, then YouTube will show this video to a lot more number of people, and that will help my channel in a big way. So please make sure to do that as well. And with that being said, let's start this video. Alright, so before we dive deep into the spreadsheet, one important thing to note here is that all the numbers that we're going to talk about, whether it's the salary, whether it's the expenses, they're all applicable just to a single person living in Canada. Now, if you're a family of two people and both of you are actually earning, then your numbers will look significantly different, especially your income will be a lot more and your expenses won't increase proportionately, so that's a good thing. However, if you have any kids or if you have any dependents, then your expenses are going to be a lot more than this, especially in Canada, because daycare costs are very high in Canada. Alright, so this is the spreadsheet that I have for you, and here we'll be comparing your monthly expenses in India versus in Canada based on a reference salary both in India and Canada, so that you can actually see how much money you'll be spending every single month against your reference salary and how much money you'll be left with in your savings at the end of every single month. Now for India, I've considered a reference salary of 15 lakhs per annum, which I think is pretty achievable, especially if you are well educated. If you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, let's say in engineering or MBA or something like that, then you can expect to earn about 15 lakhs per annum, especially if you're living in one of the biggest cities in India, such as Bangalore, Hyderabad, Mumbai, Delhi, Gurugram, etc. And similarly for Canada, I've considered $85,000 to be the reference salary, which once again is pretty attainable as long as you have a good education qualification, if you have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and if you have about 2 to 4 years of work experience. And keep in mind that both these salaries are gross annual salaries, so your tax will actually be deducted out of these salaries, so your net income at the end of every single year will be a lot lesser than this, and that's where the net monthly income comes in. So this monthly income, $4,800 in Canada and 1,08,000 rupees in India, are after tax incomes. Now after deducting all your taxes, this is what you'll have in your bank account at the end of every single month, and we'll be using this amount to calculate your savings against your monthly living expenses. And before I forget, if you want to download this spreadsheet, then the link will be in the description box below, so you can click on that link and download this spreadsheet, play around with these numbers and figure out what works for you, what doesn't, based on your specific situation, based on your specific expenses in India or in Canada, and based on that you'll be able to make a much more informed decision. So the very first category that we have on here is your monthly rent. Now hands down, wherever you live in this world, your biggest monthly expense will be your rent, and if you don't already know this, the rents in Canada are sky high, and if you're living in one of the major cities in Canada, whether it's Toronto or Vancouver, you can expect to pay about $2,250 every single month for a single one-bedroom apartment. Similarly, if you're living in India in one of the major cities, whether it's Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi, etc., then you can expect to pay about 35,000 rupees every single month in your rent. Now obviously these numbers can look a lot different depending on the city that you're living in, the type of apartment or the type of housing accommodation that you have. For example, if you're renting out the entire place all by yourself, then these numbers will look pretty much like this. However, if you're willing to live in shared accommodations, then you can actually split that cost and your rental expenses will be a lot lower than this. Similarly, if you're living in Bangalore, then 35,000 might not give you the biggest apartment or the best looking apartment, but if you're living in Hyderabad, then 35k can actually get you a pretty nice looking apartment in a guarded colony with all the amenities that you can ask for. Now one thing to keep in mind is that in Canada, space is actually limited and these apartments are extremely small. Even though the rent is extremely high, don't expect to get any fancy amenities in your building for the most part. So in addition to the difference in numbers in India versus Canada, you should also consider the difference in lifestyle that you'll get by spending 35k in India versus 2250 in Canada. In my experience, you won't get too much in 2250, but you can certainly get a lot more in 35k depending on exactly where you're living. So moving on to category number 2, which is house help. Now, as most people might already know this, in Canada there is no house help. You'll have to do pretty much everything by yourself. So that's why there is no expense in this specific category in Canada. But for India, I'm considering a nominal amount of 5,000 rupees every single month for your house help, who can help you with cleaning your house, doing the dishes, or even cooking food for you. The next category of expenses is utilities. Now, this includes your hydro, gas, internet, and phone plan. So in Canada, in addition to your base rent, you also have to pay for your utilities, which includes heating, electricity, or water charges, etc. So these expenses come out to be around $290 every single month. And this also includes your internet charges and your phone plan, because phone plans are pretty expensive in Canada. And for India, for the most part, there are no additional charges for utilities. And this 1,500 charge includes your internet plan for your home and also your mobile phone plan. All right, so now moving on to the next category, which is groceries. So in case of Canada, you can expect to pay about $350 every single month in groceries. And this charge can be about 10,000 rupees back in India. Similarly, your food expenses will be around $300 every single month. Now, this includes eating from outside, whether it's fast food or going to any restaurants. So all this comes out to be around $300 for Canada. And for India, I've considered this to be around 10,000 rupees every single month. Now, this next category on the list is shopping, which in my opinion is a variable expense, because personally, every single month might look different. In some months, I might spend the entire shopping budget, and in other months, I might not end up spending the entire amount. But on an average, I've considered around $350 every single month for shopping in Canada and about $10,000 for shopping in India. Now, these next two categories are related to your car and transportation. Now, if you don't already know this, owning a car is extremely expensive in Canada as compared to India, because insurance costs are extremely high. And in a lot of cases, your monthly insurance cost might be a lot higher than your monthly installment for owning that car. So with that being said, let's say if you own a starter car in Canada, which means not something too fancy, and a pre-owned car, which is a Honda Civic or a Chevrolet Cruze or a Toyota Corolla, then in that case, you can expect to pay around $760 every single month between your installment and your insurance payment. Similarly, you can expect to pay around 10,000 rupees every single month for a starter car in India. And fuel is also another huge cost for owning a car. So I've included about $250 every single month for your fuel cost in Canada and 12,000 rupees for India. Now, one thing to note here is that these transportation related costs might differ for you depending on whether you own a car or not, whether you're using public transport, or whether you're working in a completely remote setup where you don't have to go to your office at all. So depending on your specific situation, these numbers can look very different for you. And if you don't own a car at all, then all this can be replaced by public transit or your Uber or Ola cost. So based on all these expenses, the total comes out to be around $4,550 for Canada and around 93,500 rupees for India, which is definitely a huge portion of your net monthly income after deducting all the taxes. So based on all these numbers that we've discussed so far, the total amount of money that you can save at the end of every single month in Canada is about $250 and about 14,500 rupees in India. Now, surprisingly, 14,500 rupees and $250 are almost the exact same amount. So at the end of the day, whether you have an $85,000 salary in Canada or a 15 lakh rupee salary in India, at the end of the day, you'll be saving almost the exact same amount of money, which is obviously not too much. And basically, you'll not be saving anything, and your expenses will pretty much match your monthly after-tax income. So basically, $85,000 in Canada is sort of equivalent to 15 lakh rupees in India. Now, obviously, your lifestyle will differ significantly whether you're in India or in Canada, which we will discuss in this next section. But from a numbers point of view, this is what your income will look like against your expenses if you're living in India versus in Canada, and what you can expect to save at the end of every single month. Alright, so based on this detailed comparison that you just saw, does it actually make sense for you to move to Canada? Or is it actually better for you to live in India and continue building on your dream life there? Now, to answer this question, let's first talk about the intangible things. Now, what do I mean by intangible things? So for example, if you're someone who wants to live in an overall cleaner environment, if you want less pollution in your life, better infrastructure, free healthcare, and these are the things that mean a lot to you, then in that case, it definitely makes sense for you to move to Canada. And on the other hand, if your priority in life is to live with your family, live closer to your near and dear ones, and the pollution and the infrastructure are just minor inconveniences for you, and you don't really mind these too much, then in that case, I don't really think it makes sense for you to move to Canada, especially if you have this much salary in India, because in that case, you'll be compromising on a lot of big things, a lot of important things in life, which you won't have access to once you move to Canada. Now, leaving aside all these intangible things, if you purely talk about numbers, then if you're already earning about 15 lakhs per annum in India, and if you're in a profession where you think that you can actually grow and your salary can also grow to 30 to 50 lakhs per annum over the next 10 to 15 years, then in that case, I would highly recommend you to stay back in India and build your dream career over there, because I think you have a pretty good career trajectory in India itself. And I think India is full of opportunities, especially in today's time. Entrepreneurship is becoming a big thing in India, and salaries are also growing pretty rapidly, especially in the bigger cities, in the fields of finance, tech, etc. So overall, I think India has a lot more opportunities to offer at this point in time. And also going forward, I'm from the tech industry and I have so many friends who are working in the tech industry back in India. And I can tell you one thing, that the situation in India is very different from what it was over 10 years ago when I decided to move to Canada. Whether you're looking for high salaries or good quality work or a good work-life balance, I'm sure you'll get it all in India, especially in the tech industry and also in other industries. So you just have to keep your eyes open. And on the other hand, if you think that you don't have a great earning potential in India, but your skills are going to be much more valuable in Canada, then in that case, you should definitely consider moving to Canada. Now, some examples of these careers could be nursing, pharmacists, dentists, car sales associates, real estate agents, and so many other such fields that have a great potential in Canada, but sadly or unfortunately don't have too much potential back in India. So in that case, I would highly recommend you to consider moving to Canada. Now, obviously, some of these professions might be regulated based on your educational background and the profession that you're trying to follow. So make sure to do your proper research and only make that decision to move to Canada after you have carefully reviewed what it actually takes to pursue that specific profession in Canada, whether it's taking up additional examinations or certifications, and how long will it actually take you to start working in that specific profession in Canada. Make sure that you have a clear understanding of what career you can actually pursue in Canada, how much money you'll be earning in that specific profession, and how much you'll be saving at the end of the day. Because as I said before, it's much more important to consider how much money you'll be able to save at the end of every single month, because that will play a huge role in deciding whether it's actually worth moving to Canada for you or not. So make sure to do your proper research before deciding to move to Canada. I hope you guys found this video to be useful and this gave you a good comparison of your living expenses in India versus in Canada. And I hope you'll be able to use this information to make an informed decision for yourself. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And let me know in the comments below if you have any specific questions or if you have any requests on what videos I should make next. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.